welcome viewers again. Now today we are going to look at the relationship between perpendicular lines. So what are perpendicular lines? Perpendicular lines are lines that meet. They are lines that meet or cross each other at 90 degrees. Perpendicular lines are lines that cross each other at 90 degrees. So what is the relationship between the gradients of perpendicular lines? So if you're told that two straight lines are perpendicular lines, then the product of their gradient is equivalent to -1. So if you have this one, this is line L1 and this is line L2. So the gradient of line L1 will be M1 and the gradient of line L2 will be M2. So if line L1 and L2 are perpendicular lines, then it means that the product of their gradient is equivalent to -1. So the formula for the perpendicular lines is that M1 times M2 should give us -1. So if you are given the gradient of one line and then you're told it's perpendicular to another line, then to get the gradient of the other line, you just multiply the products of those two gradients, you equate them to -1, and then you can be able to find the gradient of the other line. So we're going to see how we can be able to find the equation of a straight line if the equation of one straight line if it is perpendicular to another straight line. So examples. A line has equation y equals to 6 minus 3x. Another line L2, another line L is perpendicular to the line, is perpendicular to the line y equals to 6 minus 3x and passes point 0, 0, passes through the origin. Find the equation of line L. So we're going to look at this question, this example. A line has equation y equals to 6 minus 3x. Another line L is perpendicular to the line y equals to 6 minus 3x and passes through the origin, which is point 0, 0. Find the equation of line L. So to find the equation of line L, we need to find the gradient of line L, and already we have a point which is 0, 0. So to find the gradient of line L, first of all, you have to understand that the relationship between these two lines. We have been told they are perpendicular lines, so it means that the product of their gradient is equivalent to -1. So let's find the gradient of this line y equals to 6 minus 3x. So the line y equals to 6 minus 3x, we rearrange it in the form of y equals to mx plus c. So it means that our -3 is going to be in front. So y equals to -3x. Then this is positive here plus 6. Now from here, our gradient is what? Our gradient is -3 because our gradient is m and m here is -3. Now we have the gradient of the line y equals to 6 minus 3x. We can be able to find the gradient of line L. How do we find the gradient of line L? We use the formula m1 times m2 equals to -1. So this is m1. m1 times m2 should give us -1. Our m1 is -3 times m2 equals to -1. So to remain with m2 on this side, we are going to divide everything by -3. This side by -3, the other side by -3. Our m2 equals to 1/3. So the gradient of L equals to 1/3. Now we have the gradient m equals to 1/3. Line L is passing through point 0, 0. Then we take another point, x, y. Now, we use a formula of finding gradient of a line, which is m equals to y2, m equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Our gradient is what? Our gradient is 1 over 3. So 1 over 3 equals to y minus 0 over x minus 0. We cross multiply. This 3 multiplies y minus 0, while 1 multiplies x minus equals to 1 into x minus 0. So 3 times y is 3y equals to x. So we divide everything by 3 by 3. Our equation of the line is what? Y equals to a third x. That's the equation of our straight line. Y equals to a third x. So in this case, our C is called the y-intercept. So it means that if our C is not here, so it means that our line is passing through 0, the origins. So that's why the y-intercept is 0. And viewers, that's how we find equation of a line when it's perpendicular to another line. Now that we have seen how we can find equations of perpendicular lines, so I want to write only one question. I want you to try it. Question that deals with perpendicular lines, and then you can see whether you're understanding something by doing this question. If you're able to do it right, then it means that you're understanding this subtopic. So the first question, I'm only going to give you one question. A line L has equation. Find the equation of line L1. So viewers, I would like you try that question, and then if you have a problem, you can always comment on the section of commenting, and then I'll get back to you if you have a problem. If you have questions, you can always ask. I'll try to answer your questions as much as possible. Now, from still equations of straight lines, sometimes they combine the two. They usually combine the concept of equations of straight line. Like you can be given a line, equation of a straight line, and then you're asked that another line is parallel to that line. So you try to find the equation as well as perpendicular lines. Sometimes you'll be told that the line is perpendicular to another one. In other words, sometimes they try to combine the concept and set the question in one question containing all those two concepts dealing with the parallel lines and perpendicular lines. So I'm going to look at an example that deals with that one. I'm going to look at one question. I'm going to do it, and then I'll give you another question. You try it later. So example, let us look at that one question that combines everything. A line L1 has equation. A line L1 has equation y equals to 4x minus 6. A line L1 has equation y equals to 4x minus 6. A, find the gradient of line L1. Find the gradient of line L1. This is the first question they want you to do. Now, when you're given the equation of a straight line, you can always get the gradient from the equation. Our gradient is 4 in this case. The gradient is 4. So we have already answered this question because the equation already is written in the form of y equals to mx plus c. So our m is 4. In other words, the gradient of line A is 4. So the second question they are also going to ask, another line L2 is parallel to L1 and passes through point -1, 5. Find the equation of L2. So we know that to find the equation of L2, we just need the gradient, and we know that this line L2 is parallel to L1. So if L1 is parallel to L2, so it means that they have the same gradient. These two lines have the same gradient. So the gradient of L2 is also 4. So this L2, we have been told, it is passing through a point -1, 5. So we take a known point x. y, and then we find the equation of line L2. Gradient equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I hope I'm not moving too fast. So our gradient is 4. 4 equals to y minus negative 5 over x minus negative 1. So with this, we put this 4 over 1. 4 over 1 equals to, I said in the previous lesson that if you have two negatives, it's equivalent to one positive. So this will be y plus 5 over x plus 1. So from there now we cross multiply. 1 multiplies y plus 5 equals to 4 multiplies x plus 1. Now from there we open the bracket. Y plus 5 equals to 4x plus 4. Then we take 5 the other side. Y equals to 4x plus 4 minus 5. So the equation of this line, the equation of line L2 is y equals to 4x minus 1. Now if you look at this equation, from the equation the gradient is 4. So this gradient is 4, is the same gradient that was here. So it means that your equation is right when the gradient is the same as the gradient that you had, or when the gradient is the same as the gradient of the other line that was parallel to the line y equals to 4x minus 1, which is line L2. Now I want to look at part C of this question. So this is now part C of the question. Part C of the question is dealing with the perpendicular lines. Now another line L3 is perpendicular to L1 and passes through 2, -1. That is -1. Find the equation of L3. So I can be able to wrap this first part of the question because you already have it. So the first equation, the gradient of the line was 4. The gradient of line L1 was 4. So M1 was equal to 4. Now we have been told L3 is perpendicular to L1. So it means that the product of their gradient is equivalent to -1. So we're going to, we know the formula M1 times M2 should give us -1, not 4, sorry, -1. So the first gradient of L1 is 4 times M2 equals to -1. Divide both sides by 4 by 4. M2 equals to -1 over 4. Now we have the gradient of line L3. We have the gradient of line L3. Now we can be able to find the equation of L3 because you have gradient is -4. This line L3 is passing through point -1. We take another point x, y. So we use the formula of finding the gradient of a line. M equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm just going to write straight away. Our M is -1 over 4 equals to y2 is y minus -1, which is y1 over x minus 2, which is x1 minus x2 minus x1. So from here we can cross multiply. First of all, I said when you have two negatives the same as positive, so we can cross multiply directly 4 into and change this one to positive equals to -1 into bracket x minus 2. Then we open the bracket. This is 4y plus 4 equals to -x. -1 times -2 is +2. So we're going to take 4 the other side. 4y equals to -x plus 2. When it cross equal sign, it becomes -4 minus 4. 4y equals to -x plus 2 minus 4 is -2. So viewers, that is the equation of this line L3, which is perpendicular to L1. And that's how you find, that's how they normally combined one question that is related. One part of the question deals with the parallel lines, another part of the question deals with perpendicular lines. So I'm going to give you one question and you can try it. And then if you have a problem, you can always ask. You can always ask a question and I'll always get back to you. So the question that I want you to try is this one. So viewers, I would wish for you to try that question. And then if you have a problem, you can always contact me. And that marks the end of our lesson today.